Welcome, everybody, to the Sapien podcast. I'm so lucky today to have Miss Christina Williams.
Yes.
Christina's got quite a resume. Thank you for joining us. I don't even know where to begin, but you're an IFBB Pro bodybuilder.
I am.
You're quite an entrepreneur, an author, and we'll talk about your book, The 28-Day Runway, an executive coach helping high-functioning people find better balance in their life. And something you really helped me with. I took one of your quizzes and it was really helpful, and we'll get into that. What else? What else do you want everyone to know about you before we get started? I know your Imagine What I Can Be program as well, right?
Thank you. Yeah, and when I named my company as of late, I don't know. I think people usually say I should have a sign above me, almost like a walking totem that says like Universe Helpline. Because I think just to inspire your listeners that if you really want to be the change in your life, I get up every single day to try to help make that one single call to action to try to inspire them and give them that direction to do so.
Yeah. I think I do the same thing. I think that in primary care, when I'm dealing with chronic disease, so much of it is, patients in my world don't really want to be on tons of drugs. That's why people come to me. And it always comes down to just like maybe one thing at the end of a visit, or I'll give them 2 or 3 things. I kind of try to make the target a little deeper than the one thing. Cause I unlike a coach who's probably engaging their patients, weekly, multiple times.
Yeah, daily.
Daily even. I have a visit, once a month at best.
Right.
So then I have to kind of create an acute plan, like something short term, and then something that they can strive for. And then we use, blood markers and biomarkers to create targets, right?
Yeah.
But it always comes down to one thing, especially when it comes to like nutrition.
Yeah.
Nutrition.
Give them something to focus on.
Yeah, like one simple thing, Some people it's as simple as let's cut out bread.
Yeah.
Right.
What you're describing is something that, especially with folks that maybe have been on their own internal dialogue system for a long time, right? It's the roommate that's talking to them. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll give them what I call their health success goal. And so every day they're supposed to just create one health success goal. It can be different every single day. But the philosophy behind that, and maybe that's really what you're trying to inspire them to do in between the breaks of seeing you is, hey, if I got up today and I did one thing to better myself, my life, my health, whatever that is, by the time I go to bed, I will feel accomplished.
Right.
And that's the key, right? Is that you start the next day feeling like, not like a piece of shit, but, oh, you know what? I did that one task and it was all I needed to do. And then that is actually what become those pebbles of the habits.
Absolutely. Yeah, it brings to mind when I was struggling with my own health, there's this great book called Own Your Life, Own the Day by Aubrey Marcus.
It's behind you. I can see it.
Yeah. Aubrey's moved on to do a lot of spiritual work, which I know you also talk about, but that's really the concept of the book. It's, each chapter targets one thing you can do, and it's like 28 chapters or something. And by the end, you really have a way to live each day to its fullest. And it's those little chips, like I call them stacking chips, right?
Yeah.
You add one chip at a time, and all of a sudden at the end of a 6-month period, you actually made a dramatic change, not a little change. A change that's more dramatic for sure than any of the pharmaceuticals I have or supplements even,
Totally.
I love all of those things, that there's no person that I never say no to drugs or no to, and some people do.
Well, they're tools, right? Drugs are tools the same way that a sleep app would be a tool or, a heavy eye mask. These are all tools in a toolbox that, some parts of your toolbox work for this stage of your life. And sometimes you need to readjust, remeasure, and resort. What tools do I need now?
It's so interesting you say that. And they change, right? So recently going through some personal strife, business, family stuff, and you just mentioned earlier the voice in your head, right? So there's
our roommates.
Our roommate, yeah. So there's this author, Michael Singer, and he wrote a couple of really great books. But The Untethered Soul.
That's where it comes from.
Really spoke to me, and this was maybe like 10 years ago,
right?
And I realized that roommate in your head is not you.
Yeah.
And you can literally separate, and that's where meditation practices, mindful practices are so important.
Yeah.
I think that's bodybuilding and weight training. I actually think that's what's happening when you're deep in a workout.
You are.
you're meditating. It's a different form of meditation. It's like active meditation when you're in that flow state of lifting or achieving that goal physically. And when I understood that, it really helped. And then more recently, with new challenges, his next book, the Surrender Experiment, which I tried to read right after, but if you get the same message over and over again, you kind of create a block, right? Yeah. It's like too much of the same.
And there were two parts of his book for Untethered Soul where it was the realization of, let's call it the sense of self, right? The person that gets to move the hands and gets to move the feet and you think is in charge. And then really it really is your parasympathetic nervous system. I mean, not to like use, big science terms, not that that should be one, but that's your roommate there's two twins, there's two Dr. Garys, one that, like I said, gets dressed in the morning. And then there's the other one that's like, this guy's not going to eat or feed me today, or is the intermittent fast or whatever narrative, we're telling ourselves. And that is going to make a series of decisions for you to look after you, not to make you skinny, not to make you fit, not to make you, if anything, by design, it's like, I better protect my human and start, guessing what I think they're going to do because I'm here to protect you. And sometimes that's theoretical and sometimes that's physical.
Yeah.
But it manifests in a certain way.
And if you don't think about that dichotomy, those two entities, you create cognitive and spiritual discord inside of yourself. And I think that's, if anyone's listening to this and going through emotional stuff, physical stuff, or something as simple as like, I can't get myself motivated to go to the gym, right? That's often a great place to start is what is that dialogue that's ongoing in your head that's blocking you? Is it that I'm tired? Oh, just keep telling yourself I'm tired. Are you tired?
Right.
Or is this entity in your mind telling you you're tired?
It's triggered. That's actually why, if we can get into it, the reason why I created the Serenity Sphere was to figure out, what is the heaviest rock in my backpack, for example, right? Like, not in terms, some people, they don't want to look at it as like how did I get here? That takes very emotional astuteness to reflect, almost like a postmortem of like, hey, how did I end up where I ended up? But instead it's like, okay, I am tired and I'm tired all the time. Oftentimes people will jump right into the gym or they will jump into the doctor's office, right? And when I say doctor's office, I mean traditional westernized medicine. I don't mean the wonderful things that you're doing here at Evolve. I mean, I'm going to go to my doctor and and
get a stimulant or get an antidepressant or something.
Right. I mean, myself, I'm on the cusp of menopause, and just went through that process trying to let my doctors do their jobs lovingly. And, the feedback I got back was because we want them to be part of our hero story, right?
Yeah.
And and as I'm doing the Zoom call with, bless her heart, I can just see, I see her ceiling immediately. We also probably have the same level of schooling and education and experience, which, I'm not always coachable. So I just show up and say, I'm going to let you coach me, which is super important. I'm going to allow you to influence me, right? Gottman talks about that a lot. And, and I could just see her eyes. And I know that if she was being honest, she would say, listen, I have a pocket full of Wellbutrin and Prozac. I am not able to give you anything else because my constructs of what I'm allowed to even discuss with you are so limited. And oh, by the way, that's our time.
Right.
And
so hard.
It's not her, but yet we're all part of this process. And it's also the reason why, amazing practices like yours exist because you find folks looking for answers instead of reasons. Yeah. And they're going to go outside the walls. And, bodybuilding is very much like that where I had shared that where we are physically, my training, I've been bodybuilding since 2010. My training was 5 miles from your office.
Oh, really?
Yeah, actually, we would come up every 5 weeks and I would sequester myself away from all the things. And my trainer, my coach at the time, Kelly Craven, who was amazing, I would walk up and he'd say, lift this. I never knew how much weight was on. But how much did she do? She did 3 reps. All right, I'm going to go for 5. But you have to kind of take yourself out of those elements. I'm segueing, of course.
You're
but
fine. That's good. It all connects. I think bodybuilding is, you know, an underappreciated art form in a sense. Because
we're the OGs.
Yeah, it's
really
the first people that really thought about, you know, metabolism, you know, counting macros.
Right. What is a macro? Getting confused. What's a 22 grams of carbs versus 22 grams of this weight? And I'm like, it's called math. You know? Yeah. And you'll see now everything that is around us really stemmed from bodybuilding. They're just not aware. And we're as bodybuilders, we're actually kind of struggling, even though I don't think there's a lot of honesty around the sport, by way of we were the original scientists. And with YouTube, with Instagram, with social media, they've taken a sliver, a very, very fine sliver of maybe someone overhearing us or catching something that we would have said or done, and then kind of blowing it out as if it's fact or it's reason or it works. And in reality, we're doing math. We watch our science metrics, and you know, it's a little sad, I think, what's kind of going on now, because the narrative and the root is being lost. And this drawback to, you know, factual target markers, right? In bodybuilding, we must follow. We don't get the luxury of going home and having a beer with our friends.
Yeah.
You know, we will look at heart rate. We will look at our macros. We will understand body composition. And I would really love to see that get into an everyday dialogue at our level and within the world, because people need to first understand that body composition.
Yeah.
And bodybuilders are the OGs of kind of where everything stems.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have, at least in the last year or something, there's been a lot of bodybuilders that have created platforms where they share honestly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's really cool.
It is cool.
It is cool. And I think, you know, taking the stigma off some of the performance enhancing substances, some of the hormone management, because I think that it's easy to say, oh, steroids are bad.
Right,
it's
right.
just
You took
bad.
this pill,
it's just
you
bad.
cheated.
But then, like, everyone on the, you know, there's a clinic down the street that you walk in, you say, hey, I want TRT.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what your T level is, you get it. So
Right.
is that steroid abuse? I mean, you can look at it in many ways. I think probably I've seen way more good come from TRT than bad, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that so many physicians too, because of that stigma, don't learn about anabolics, SARMs,
peptides.
Yeah. It's a whole world, right? It's not just, oh, there's DECA. Oh,
right.
You know, that's it. Oh, and
there's
that's bad.
T-ball, and there's like, oh, we're going to take a bunch of tren, and it's like, whoa. I mean, and the thing too is that, you know, when you go to professional bodybuilders, we have to run our lives the same way that everyone else does, but we're really not allowed to, you know, talking about owning the day. We are some of the most organized, professional, thoughtful, empathetic humans, because we really don't have the luxury to kind of muck about emotionally in other areas, because we're going to do everything you're doing and then the other things on top of it.
Yeah.
Right?
The discipline it takes to be at a high level to get your pro card. I don't think people realize the kind of commitment it is. And, you know, it's the highest level athlete.
It's the highest level
and
athlete.
the highest level mental athlete. That's the thing. It's people think it's, oh, you just go to the gym and lift. No. It's every second of your life,
Right.
every bite that goes in your mouth, meal prepping, how much you sleep when you have to get up in the middle of the night to get your calories and get your macro goals in, because you can't sleep through the night, you won't get there.
Right.
There's so much to it. You know, before I was ever a doctor, when I was in college, I picked up, like many people, Arnold's Encyclopedia to Bodybuilding and watched Pumping Iron.
Right.
You know, and that's like a silly, but no, that was for, you know, a 19-year-old Gary.
Oh, yeah.
An opening to, wow, you can control what your body looks like, what your mind behaves like, through just controlling your diet.
Very
and
simple
what
lifestyle tasks.
Very. And so for me, I think when I look back on it, that was my first foray into health.
Yeah.
Right? Is just understanding, like, look, I'm a really skinny kid. My genetics are really skinny, but, you know, I grew up watching WWE and I wanted to look like that.
Yeah.
And did I ever get there? No. I took some other paths, but I sure got I hit some really impressive goals for myself.
Yeah.
And that gave me so much confidence. And that helped me succeed through med school and residency, where everyone was eating, gaining 20 pounds because they were stress eating. And for me, I was like, No, for me, it was nothing. Like I went into med school and I was like, I'm going to come out fitter, in better shape. And if I'm stressed out, I'm not getting a muffin. I'm going to the gym. And everyone's like, what are you doing in the gym? I'm like, what are you doing?
I have all this energy and all of this emotional container that I need to somehow expel that feels positive. You know, talking about bodybuilding and the early Gary, if we can call him that, there's kind of a crossroads that we all come to in our lives where, you know, you're standing there and you're like, well, I can either choose to inform myself and take action, or I can allow myself to kind of get more comfortable and swept away because I have reasons that it would be allowed, right? But it's like, what I always want to study is what makes someone go left and what makes someone go right. Because we all have that moment in life. I mean, if you read about me, you know, my mom, you know, taken away at 7, so much trauma, you name it, it happened. I almost feel like that was easier because it gave me an option to go, you know what, that life doesn't look good for me. And, oh, wait a second, I have to be responsible to myself. I need to feed myself. I need to take care of myself. My brain was wiring itself to take responsibility and accountability. When people ask me, oh, what are your ideal clients? My answers are, you know, you don't even need 10 fingers and 10 toes, but that you are ambitious to steward yourself through the day.
Absolutely.
Because I can change everything about you but your height. You know? I mean, we could get shoes, but
now there's some crazy surgeries you can do, but we're not going to get into that.
Right. But it's like, oh, wow, I can take control of my actions and I can change my narrative. Yeah. And again, not to circle back to this serenity sphere, it's like, well, what would my first step be? Right? For you, it was the gym. For some folks, it's like if you didn't get a good night's sleep, if you didn't eat right the night before, that you know, showing up in the gym and that there's emotional connections that you said, oh, Skinny Gary, these names that we it's almost like we're talking shit to ourselves, right? Where, hey, don't be mean to my friend Gary, you know? But if we were to empower him, what's one area of his life that maybe was holding him back the most, or in his mind would reap the biggest benefit to help him find that courage to keep going? And then what do we do? Yeah.
It's that was great because you connected it all. Like if you're listening to this, it's not all over the place. It's all connected because and I think the root of what I've been talking about on this podcast for the last year or two is the mind, body, spirit connection, because it is one thing.
Yeah.
Like and that's what the Serenity Sphere, what hit me about the questions, because you know, it was like a compilation of all of these kind of what might appear as a silly series of questions in like a magazine or something. But when you compile them, connecting all 3 of these components, and yours is way more robust. You have, I think, 10 components, and I learned a lot about where I'm at right now. But it's that dynamic interplay of the mind, body, and spirit that actually is health. That's how you do it. And it's not just the gym. It's doing that spiritual work. It's acknowledging your trauma, like you were saying, and being like, okay, so what am I going to do with this? Am I going to now be a victim of this trauma and live the life that my mom lived or didn't live, you know, or am I going to be the person I want to be?
Yeah.
And that's not just going to the gym and working on the body. That's acknowledging the spiritual crisis you're obviously in when you have childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And then how do I control those emotions, let them work for me so that their motivation in the gym or their motivation in the workplace and not like a weight, an albatross you're carrying all the time.
I call it like, and you know, where we see a lot of folks today and especially with, you know, the massive weight gain is they feel like they're at the bottom of this laundry pile and there's like a pin poke up to see the light. If maybe. And I mean across every level. I don't care if I've coached people you see on television every day, all the way to, you know, stay-at-home moms. And we all struggle with the same problems. And then you look at folks like, you know, yourself and myself, where it's like, oh, they look like they have it figured out. No, every day I still get up and I still go through the same sense of what rituals do I need that keep Christina still having friends and relationships, right? And there are days where I wake up and I'm like, I tell my best friend Miriam, I'm not ripe for human consumption today because I might act off brand, right? And, you know, talking about hormones, you know, especially as my body is starting to change, you know, kind of being where I'm at in any moment, right? But it's, going back to what we saw with your test results.
Oh,
which,
you looked at it?
Of course
Okay,
I did.
cool.
Of course I did. And what I love about it is, what I never really see people doing, which I hope I can kind of like high five you. If we don't take the time to define what success would look like in our lives, even when you do score very high, sometimes we don't realize that we've made it. We don't realize that we're part of this bigger system. And for, those of us that are ambitious, we can kind of sit back and go, oh, am I bored? Am I uninspired? Like I'm doing all the things. Oh, no, wait. The hard work that I was doing every day to keep me here, it's working. Okay, well, and so what I see is sometimes I have to ask myself when I'm supposed to relax. Because you mentioned, oh, Christina, what do you want us to know about you? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm always working on something. I chase accolades. It was always a system that helped me keep on the straight and narrow. But to say that, it's like so rarely do people define, and especially when you're working with your outside aesthetics, right? It's what is my goal, right? Yeah, it's to live longer and have my blood work match, me living a healthy, fruitful life. But like, what does success feel like so that when I'm there, I can go, hey, you're doing a good job. And I can kind of make sure that if I do deviate, I do have something to lose, right? So it's the reason why you do keep going to bed on time and why you do keep supporting this system on top of itself. But, what does success look like? What will you feel like when you get there? Because you might be there now, and now you just need a hobby, right? So I DJ because I was like, well, I can go back to school, but like, what would I... and I do believe that continuing education is super important. I want to know what the new kids are saying. I've been coaching so long that when I told people I was a coach, I think they thought I was running like a baseball team.
Yeah.
And everyone's a coach now, right? Like there are two music. And look, the world needs coaches, and I'm so happy that they are finding these.
Yeah.
But the world is really opening up, and this term is becoming more present day, which is amazing. People need support. But it's like, yeah, when you've been in it so long, it's like, oh, they're calling these things names now,
Well, it used to be that, people would be, before all this tech, people and this weird society where we're not so friendly and not so integrated, like your coaches were your friends.
Yeah.
It was your family members. It was, someone you really looked up to. Now it's very easy to get sucked into whatever micro world online it is, and then you lose sense of all the things that are important. So I think coaches are sort of a response to the digitization of everything and a reconnection with someone. And yeah, it is a way for people to make money, but it's also a way for people to reach out for help and get a real person that actually cares about you, that's looking at your specific life, your specific goals, and then giving you guidance. It's something that I would hope religion brings some people, but often doesn't. I would hope that like a good teacher in school would have brought people, but I don't know anymore.
Right.
It just, the world has changed so much even since I was Skinny Gary. It's really changed a lot, and it's about to change even more. So I think the coaching is it's needed. It's necessary to reconnect people. So I've had a number of coaches on the podcast, and I'll continue to work with coaches. And I work with all sorts of folks that do everything from, physical work to spiritual work to sound healing to somatic work. I had a great somatic therapist on, and it's like all of the things. It's not this or that. It's all the things, because we have to recalibrate ourselves in this new world.
We do.
And we need all the tools.
Yeah. What I love that you said was, and thank you for also saying this, because although coaching is becoming much more prevalent in our everyday dialogue, you're right. Where it rooted was, oh, as a friend, or oh, is this, or oh, is that. And I don't know if I mentioned, I'm working with a really exciting company now called Victory AI. And what I love about them is they are, I have to say, when I first joined the team, it really was coming on as a demo for the platform. And I'm sitting in front of these, Olympic runners, Olympic cyclists in Europe, and our two founders, Marcus and Klaus. They're literally from a town in Austria that's 10 kilometers from where Arnold Schwarzenegger was born and raised. So obviously bodybuilding is in their genes, but they were focused on endurance sports. And what I love about this company and what they're doing, and what you just said was, coaching has changed. It is not just your friends. It is now folks that, they are running businesses. We need to promote and elevate them and keep them able to still be a coach, because, their revenue and what they're bringing in, because still some of the narrative around like their value proposition, it needs to elevate at that same rate. If they're being honest, one of the biggest things that coaches struggle with is not their desire to coach, but bridging this gap to coupling them with the right people, because they don't want to be on Instagram. They don't want to be on social media selling themselves. They joined this world, much like yourself, to give back and to be part of someone's positive journey and narrative. And something I love about Victory is trying to bridge that gap and supporting them, and then giving them a platform to do so, because we're going to lose them. We're going to burn them out.
Yeah.
And then taking personal trainers and elevating them to the level of the coach by bridging these gaps and these knowledge gaps. And that has to do with what we call Victory University, where, we want to teach them body composition. I want to take what Red Bull's doing down the street with their 800 pro athletes and these nuggets that we learn from top tier coaches like myself, and go, hey guys, psst, this is how we show the humans how we're doing it, because that's how you make an impact, right? Keeping them fed is one thing, but then actually helping to empower them and then giving them information so that they can be mindful with their clients. They're boots on the ground front line with the positive health impact of the world.
It's like using the AI technology to give the coaches these tools so they can stay coaches and really help them and use the tech to the advantage instead of confusing everyone. Yeah,
so it's a dashboard where we assimilate all of the health data from wearables, everything from your Apple Watch to the Whoop, even to body composition scales with Withings, and then bringing on Renfo. A coach or a trainer, when your athletes show up, maybe if the client could afford it, they might see you once a week. Maybe they'll see you twice. They have no idea that maybe Gary didn't sleep the night before, or maybe Gary's HRV has been through the roof because, he's been stressed, holding his breath. This is a real life conversation we now get to have. Right. And so now, instead of, me making you throw up doing HIIT, maybe the conversation when you show up is, hey, Gary, what's going on in your life? It looks like you didn't sleep very well the last couple of nights. That right there takes, talking about bridging the gap between trainer and coach and human. Now I can have a real conversation and give them one really simple thing to do, but on a human level, right?
It's so interesting because it's just a direct parallel to, I use blood work, right?
Yeah.
I look at blood work and I interpret it differently than other doctors.
Yeah.
It's not that special. I always say that it's not that special.
Right.
You have to do only the basic amount of research outside of traditional medicine to understand how to assess a fasting insulin level,
right,
homocysteine levels, and just some markers that the doctors that are listening are like, I don't check that.
Right.
Well, just look into it. There's a lot of research. It's not lucrative for the medical industry,
right?
So it's not promoted to us, but it's useful for patient care, and it's certainly useful to give people a more comprehensive idea of what's going on with them.
Yeah.
And I wish I could do it more frequently, and I wish I could give everyone more attention. And I've said it a million times on the podcast, I'm holding on to the insurance-based practice as long as I can, but it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks. I can't give everyone 100%. It's not possible. At the end of a clinic day, I'm destroyed because I'm using those 15 minutes. I'm using every second. Sometimes I'm going over and people are waiting because I feel like this person needs more.
And it's a never-ending battle. So because you have two offices, it's almost like on the one side, it's, let's say it's disease management, right? Which is, 90 to 95% of disease is lifestyle and environment. And so if I could be impactful, right? So we have disease management on the left, and then we have health and longevity on the right. And so it's like, how do we get more people out of the left office and into the right office, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think financial burdens. I think the healthcare industry doesn't incentivize health; it incentivizes disease management.
Totally,
everyone knows this, but my little way of doing it is having this podcast and at least integrating it as much. I have a lot of content I share with people.
I love it. Actually, it's why when they reached out, I was like, I have to meet this guy and just give him a hug and say thank you for doing what you're doing.
I'm trying so hard, but it's so hard. I don't know how many more years I have of that model really working. I mean, you talk about burnout and stuff. I mean, I burn out. I don't just burn out. I burn out regularly.
Right.
Like in cycles, and then I have to shut it down. I have to go back to my sauna, go back to my exercise, go back to my sleep, because it's slowly,
the foundation.
But it slowly drifts away as you get more burned out, as you have more tough days, as something bad happens, or something just unpredictable happens, and it's hard to hold on to these things. And
or you look in the news, right, and you're like, "Gosh, I'm trying to help my humans live better," and then if you do any research on any let me say Atlas figure, and when I say Atlas, I mean because we're holding the world and we can't shrug. Right. And sometimes I just want to set this down for a second. Can you just, okay, guys, can 5 of you just kind of help me hold this for a second? Because mommy's getting tired, and the world expects so much of us. And often, unfortunately, guys, ladies, humans, I just need you to expect a little bit from yourself, But in saying that, two matriarchs, if I will, is that a feminine term? Sorry. Of our communities, we do have to look after ourselves, right? And we do get drained more so than others because everyone around us, as loving as they are to us, they have their hands out because they need to be fed. And so I ask you, so I can, the Serenity Sphere, you did great. Creativity was a little bit in the yellow.
My spiritual stuff was low too. Yeah,
what's really funny is that I'm segueing, but it's like it's like how do we fill our cup ups, right? There's this story. My girlfriend Rebecca, I started a women's group called Machiavelli for Women, which is around trying to identify in your friend group, because we never talk about like, what do you do for a living? But hey, how do I help you? How do I understand where you want to go? It's the reason my book ever got published, because Sandy called me once a week and was like, how many pages did you write?
Yeah, someone keeping you, holding your feet to the fire.
Accountable. But it's like, okay, well, when we're surrounded by so much need, how do you fill your cup up? Because if you don't do that, it's not selfish, but if you don't do it, and I'm talking to the nurturers of the world, we have an obligation to ourselves to do that. Because if we don't, a lot of people are going to suffer.
You're the 4th person in my life, and I've had a tough few weeks, 4th person in my life to remind me of that message, because I just give. I'm programmed. I am at this point. I was born that way.
Kindred spirit.
I'm programmed to heal and give. I always say, like, I am a healer. Anyone who knows me, that's what I am. I just happen to be a doctor. No, it doesn't matter what I would have done. It was going to be me giving and helping and trying to pull people up to what I consider like an acceptable version of life. And like, you're the 4th person in my life to remind me that I have an obligation to take care of myself, because if I don't, there's nothing left. And
you know what I'm going to get you is, I'm looking at my hand right now, and I have a couple bracelets, 3 of them. 2 of them are from Switzerland, my old life when I was in corporate America and my soul was draining. And then this 3rd one it looks like some really simple beads, but this actually is a gift from my girlfriend Karen, who's part of my community. This is from Guatemala, and where she's from. And this town in Guatemala has trying to give back to their women, teaching them skills that they can sell goods and services to the local communities. And so this bracelet is specifically for the caregivers of the community, to remind us that we have to take care of yourself. And so I am going to get you, Karen, I know you'll be listening. We are getting Dr. Gary one of these bracelets. This is my 4th bracelet, because when it breaks, I go back to her and I say, Karen, I need another bracelet. And it's her way of hugging me. Right? Yeah.
We all need that. It's so important. I want to talk about the Serenity Sphere because I want people to take the test. My wife took it this morning.
She did?
She did. I actually had to leave, so I'm excited to talk to her about it. It's it asks questions. Actually, for those interested, how can they find the Serenity Sphere test? Because it's just on your website, right?
Yeah, it's just on my website, which I'm sure that we'll put a link to, with the podcast. It's really easy. ImagineWhatICanBe.com. At the very top, I think if you even go to the website, it'll say, hey,
take the test.
You want to take this quiz?
Yeah.
And literally, it's free. I spent it took me 2.5 years to even make it. And I've showed another coach, and he's like, how'd you do this? And in my mind, I'm like, I don't really want to tell you. Because it took me 1.5 years to really go through the questions. And when you meet me, I'm a very no-nonsense. That's, the people that are gravitating towards my personality we're ambitious. Yeah. So I might ask some questions where it took my husband, Aaron, 5 times to take it because at the time he was really struggling at work, and he would get to the work questions and he would go, I don't want to take this test.
Answer it. Yeah.
And I said, well, then that really means that you need to sit with yourself and really take the test. Oh, it's okay that you take a time out. And you have to really recognize your mental state when you are taking it. Because what I'll see is that when people see the results, they're like, oh, I want to take it again. And actually when I have them take it, if I can talk about these 2 amazing humans, Team Guzman, they're amazing husband and wife. And when they first took my quiz, they had a relatively low score. And I've graduated them. They're on their cruise with their family. And now they're in the 80s. Yeah. And so to not only join their life and say, hey guys, where am I at? And where should we focus as a family? Not just, hey, I want to do this with you, but this is how this is not a testimonial. This is how you feel about each one of these areas in your life. And we move the needle.
Yeah.
In your words, not in mine, but wow. I did a good thing.
Feels good.
Yeah.
For me, it really opened my eyes. I've invested so much of myself into my education, my career, that those were high because I'm proud of what I do and I'm good at what I do. So that part was easy. But, I was a musician my whole life. I did, weightlifting, exercise. That was the way I kept myself going. And I could see just when I looked at it, I'm like, and it perfectly reflects the things I've had to let go.
Thank
you.
I
had to let go of my art. I don't play guitar very much anymore.
Are you sad about that?
Well, what the test made me realize is, there is only so much time in this world.
Right.
And, now I'm starting a family and that's going to make it more difficult. And
congratulations.
Thank you. But it's it's a forever challenge to create an actual balance. The other thing it really showed me, and I was so excited about, is how strong my friend group is.
Yeah.
So there's no way I get to where I'm at without not just my family, but that friend group.
Right.
The people that I'm not directly related to, but the
your
people,
chosen family.
My chosen family. And that is, I think, the game changer that people are missing. And I'm blessed to have a very robust community of that. Personally, from high school, from college, from just, even podcasting. I have some very close friends that I met through a podcast. And
well, now we're friends, so now you're stuck with me.
Yeah, I love it. But that's how you do it, is you put yourself out there. And
the courage.
Those people make me better.
Yeah.
My family keeps me up. They keep me going. They give me love. They give me what I need. That's that rock foundation that keeps me from crumbling when stuff gets hard. But it's my friends, my chosen family, as you said, that actually projects me forward.
Yeah.
That pushes me just like a coach, right? That's where I saw that connection. It's like that. If you don't have that in your life, then you need a coach.
You need it. The same way that, where I see folks, and we're going to circle back to you starting a family because I have a little nugget for you.
Okay.
When I look at how people respond, and kind of using my husband Aaron as an example, he really didn't want to focus on his work environment. So in the Serenity Sphere, that would be your profession. But in saying that, it's sometimes, especially as stewards of holding the world, if you will. I mean, I do a lot of work with feeling. I do appreciation work and things like that. But it's oh wow, I did I did do the work that put forth this foundation for me to be able to give, right? So a pat on the back of, because we can lose our way when we get tired.
Yeah.
You know, the work is endless, if you will. And anything with human beings is always going to be like that. Our job is never done. And so sometimes taking a step back and going, oh, wow, I am doing good. Now, the question is, at what cost? And so my question to you is, and this is work that I'll do with folks that are going to retire. A lot of senior folks, you know, maybe they've made some smart money moves and they want to go on and enjoy the next chapter of their life. Or maybe if you're listening, you're at the catalyst of a life change. You know, women, myself, for example, I can't speak for men, but, you know, we go through these phases of reinvention, right? When I normally get interviewed, they're like, well, tell us about yourself. And I normally start with, I'm on my 4th life.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is what I'm learning in this one. But in saying that, you know, the Dr. Gary that wants to be, you know, what would your life look like in balancing your 2 practices and being able to show up as a father? Because if you can start to put in the visualization of what that life would look like, it starts building a roadmap, almost like a directions to, okay, well, if and you have to do it when you're free of mind. But what would superhero Dr. Gary Dad's life look like in a perfect world? And then that really starts to help shift out, oh, you know what? I do need to lessen my commute. Yeah. I do need to do this, because it starts to really define itself and become that directions to where you want to be. But if we're going to dream, imagine what I can be, what would that look like? You know?
Are you asking me?
I am. Yeah.
It would be divorcing myself from the insurance business. I think that it is highly toxic, unpredictable. We're seeing how it could just be through one swift pen of a legislature can destroy an entire industry or create one and then destroy it 4 years or 8 years later. So,
and as a parent, you need stability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like,
as a husband, you need stability. As any caregiver, right?
Anyone. Yeah. Stability is the only way you don't lose your mind. Yeah.
Right.
So, and we live in a very unstable times. You know, at the time of recording this podcast, we've got, you know, protests / riots on the street. Yeah. We've got bombings going on in the Middle East. We've got, I mean, the world feels like it's about to fall apart. So
I was almost worried about, I wasn't worried about coming here, but I almost emailed V and then I thought, you know what? The universe will put me where I need to be when I need to be there. And I'm an adult. I'm going to sort out whatever my logistics things are. And I want to put myself there. So this isn't how I die. I've seen how I die and this is not it. So I'm no matter what, unless they call me, I'm coming.
That's funny. I don't think it's, you know, we're actually in a good part of the city right now, but I have friends in very scary parts of the city and they're, you know, I've never been nervous for LA. Yeah. I'm nervous for LA right now because it's bad, but
I cry just watching it, and not that we need to talk about those things, but I think you can't be a human and not watch on any of the sides and just, you know, this is like where, you know, if you look at, what is it, Jordan Peterson, and he looks at, you know, this is how one little thing then creates another little thing. And again, back to how we started this podcast was taking accountability and responsibility every day for every little decision. And you know what, if you can take the serenity sphere and move your positive needle one little notch on the right side, because hurt people. Yeah. People that grew up in an environment where they didn't feel loved, where they felt bullied, where they didn't feel seen. You know, please, if I can help you, I mean, I put this together. Anything I do is so that you can say, you know what, I want to be better today. And much like you, I'm sure you wake up every day and think, how do I do that? So to go back to your insurance, right? I mean, it's like, how do you discouple that, right? If it's monetary, and we're going through this exercise because I'm sure people can resonate with them finding themselves in the crossroads. And it's like, okay, well, what does that look like? Well, you know, I need to make X amount of dollars every month. Okay, well, is your education and your clientele able to yield that? Yeah, if I can go get 10 more patients. Okay, now we have a call to action.
Yeah, for me, I thought about it, and I want So as soon as I finished it and I looked at the results, I went and unpacked my music stuff that's been packed up for 6 months, and it's like set up. I reached out to my brother-in-law, who's sort of a spiritual guide for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, why don't you send me that meditation app? Because it's been a long time. And,
is that timekeeper?
No, it was, he just sends me these mindful, guided, because I have a hard time just meditating. I'm not practiced enough in it. So they're guided meditations that, maybe a year back I was doing it, and then it falls away, so
Your roommate is very loud, is that right?
My roommate is very, well, my problem is I have, in any given day, I'm interacting with hundreds of people. I'm making hundreds of decisions. By the time I get home,
you're so decision fatigued.
Blah. It's just blah. And now,
did you find words? We have this word I'm gonna find words today. Just they're coming. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, I can't. Sometimes I can, and the problem is my wife is amazing, and we're waiting on a baby girl here, and it's like I have to fix that. I have to be able to come home and have something to give. So yeah, I mean, for me, the practice is tied to my parents. My parents are at the end of their career. If I were to change it now, they would lose their career, and I don't want to do that. I want them to work as long as possible, because once they lose their sense of purpose, I know that things will change dramatically for them. So,
and you bring up a really good point of where a lot of folks are finding themselves right now is we thought we were going to be able to raise a family and start a family, and our parents, they weren't going to be kids yet, right? And so then there's some pressure sometimes with, we thought we were going to get time to just enjoy our lives in this moment. And we realized, oh, wait a second, I now need to take on a little bit more. I thought I was going to get a break.
Yeah, there's no breaks.
There's no breaks.
If you're ambitious and you want to live.
That's why we bodybuild. So we lift weights, we can get stronger to carry the things, right?
You keep bringing it up. I want to bring it up. Ayn Rand was a huge influence in my life. When I was a young man and just starting that point where I was trying to build myself, I didn't have a lot of mentors or guides. I was at UCLA. It was a little bit party, but I was into the academics, so I always did well with that. And I just needed something. I don't even know who introduced me to her books.
Yeah.
But for the first time I started reading, and I was like, oh, this is someone talking about the kind of person I want to be.
Yeah.
And then I found out about all sort of the backlash of people thinking that selfishness is bad, or that having this sort of strong ideology of how I want to do things, and holding firm to that despite any fallout that comes, and that's bad, right? and it opened my eyes to political ideologies. It opened my eyes to how one chooses to live their life. So she was incredibly influential for me, and I wanted to be Atlas.
Yeah.
Right? For me, when I read it, Howard Rourke, Reardon, these characters, I forget the female characters, but they were the best, actually. The female characters she had are incredible, but these characters were the ones that I was like, that's the kind of person I want to be.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to shrug, but I want to be in the position where I'm in control of what I can control and driving a life that I want to drive. So, I've not had anyone bring up Ayn Rand. I think it's this hot button topic, but I think it's the thing that probably transformed me into the person I am now, because it showed me that you can choose to live your life the way you want to live your life.
Yeah.
And if you do that, it is because I want to do it for myself. It is selfish, but that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, because look at how many people I'm helping by just saying, 7 years ago, I said, all the stuff they taught me about nutrition is bogus.
Right.
90% of the stuff they taught me about medications and supplements are bogus.
They're trying to please too many people and get by-in, when really the body is the body, science and science, blood work is blood work. This is math. We're not doing math.
Evolutionary biology is important, physiology, biochemistry, and in medical education they teach you these foundational sciences, and then they teach you clinical medicine, and these two things are not connected.
Right.
You can understand ATP, you can understand how glucose is metabolized and protein is metabolized, and then they over here go, just eat grains and vegetables and a little bit of protein, and you're like, but that doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah.
You taught us all this stuff, and then you told us to tell other people this other stuff. It doesn't make sense. So I read a few books from scientists, and I was like, oh no, I can't in good conscience promote a DASH diet's going to fix you.
I know.
It's not going to fix you. And the research is pretty flimsy.
Yeah.
And if you're going to recommend something that goes against evolutionary biology, you better have really good research, and you don't.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with these other scientists, right? These scientists that aren't, on these boards of 3-letter organizations.
Right.
I'm going to listen to them because that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And the outcomes over the, has been remarkable. Like, I mean,
plus you sit with your clients, when you have to, and I tell folks this, listen, when you have to sit on this side of the table with them every day, all day, or once a month, or whatever your touch points are with your people, the entire value proposition and the buck stops here. You have to take professional and personal accountability because we are not siloed on this side, and nor should we ever. And I think that's why you find so many people are rushing over here, and we all can exist together. There's a place for everyone. The table is big; everyone can eat. But you see the world very differently, and you stop. I think we have to stop some of these outside constraints. It's almost like I've been sponsored by some of the biggest names that you will see in bodybuilding, nutrition shops, clothing brands. And it's, they serve a purpose when you're actually competing. And now I would never allow anyone to sponsor me. And the reason why is because I can't toe the party line because I don't know if this person has a food intolerance to sheep's milk. Right. And this is the primary, or everything has soy, or this is this. I'm not able to support my humans from a bio-individuality standpoint and also be in bed with you. So I need to figure out how to feed myself and be successful on all these other areas, because if that's the name of the game, insurance could be a swap in for that same example, right?
Exactly.
Where it's like, what I really want as a human? I want to sleep well at night, and I want a shit ton of people that are pissed off at my funeral, Right. And that's because they're like, we just need... I went to Burning Man a couple years ago. I also DJ. And
what's your DJ name?
My DJ name is Femme Fatale.
Femme Fatale.
Femme Fatale, yes.
Cool.
And I found music because I needed an outlet. I couldn't just keep going back to school, and that serves a very much needed part of me. But, picking back up we need to touch the other parts of our brain, and in solidarity too sometimes, right? Where you have to focus when you do music. And not only that, I am scared shitless sometimes, DJing on the main stage, I still will shake sometimes. If you ever see my body language, what I'm doing, I'm holding down one of the channels that's not on because I need a few tracks to get in to just get my nerves out, because my roommate's like, don't fuck this one up,
Yeah.
And I'm like, shh, but it's, I'm awake. I'm not afraid of heights, or I am afraid of heights. So this is my creative outlet. It fills my cup up. I also was abused as a kid, so I didn't get a chance to, play the guitar. I didn't get a chance to come home with trophies. So you know what? I turned as a professional. I became a pro athlete at 30 years old. That is... And by the way, thank you for acknowledging what the IFBB stands for, because people will compete their entire lives and they will never make it. Yeah. Never. It is not just about talent. It is not just that you slept and you went to the gym. The stars have to align. And, I remember when I got my pro card and Jeremy Buendia's running back, it's like the world doesn't understand that. And I even told my family's friends, I did it. And they were like, that's nice. And I was like, oh, wow, people don't get it.
They don't get it.
And it's for us, it's for us. It's segued such a beautiful thing in my life. But yeah,
anyone could lift weights, but the difference between lifting weights and getting your IFBB card is it's mountains. It's mountains. It's so much effort. And, we were going through all this the last few weeks. So timely, our conversation. It's so funny.
The universe works in such a, and for folks listening to this podcast, you can create so many. It's not just a doctor and a pro athlete or this. I mean, we're normal human beings. We're struggling with the same things. We also probably had the same crossroads, and will continue to do so every day in our lives, where we're going to struggle with the same things everyone else is doing.
It's all a struggle. The difference is it's not talent. It's diligence. It's work. It's like the commitment to it and the commitment to just grind and work. And there's maybe this, I was watching this show and they're like, oh, the grind culture. It's like that. I'm like, no, you're missing it.
Where are these narratives coming? You know what? This is the comfort culture, pissed off at the culture that's like, that doesn't, you know, listen, occasionally, you know, on my drive home from Santa Rosa, for example, I might stop into Taco Bell. Why? You know what? I grew up on that, and it serves a nice little hug for me occasionally. I don't self-soothe through food. I might self-soothe this through hard work and just kind of going back to work. But in saying that, it's like, you know, it's a nice to have, not a need to have, you know, and yeah, the grind.
The grind to me is something to be venerated, not, you know, oh, that's bad. Like if you don't grind, nothing feels good actually.
When they don't feel good, you know, and if you catch yourself doing this, sometimes when a client comes on first, I have to have this backhanded compliments conversation because, you know, really before the big GLP-1 movement, people did not see other people making progress. They really didn't. So I'd have to sit them down and say, listen, I don't know who in your family, best friend, friend group, church, community is going to look at you and go, so you're just going to do that all day? And I'm like, wait, what part of like drinking water, going for a walk, and being mindful of what we're eating is triggering you right now? And really what they mean, the same way as the narrative when you were in school of the, what did you call it? It wasn't the grind culture. It was, hey, I'm not going to just accept that these are my circumstances. I'm going to take risk. I'm going to take accountability first, right? This narrative from those folks singing a different tune, what they really, really mean is, I don't feel good. I don't know how to get started like you did, and I need some help. But I think maybe the world says I should be smart enough that I should have already figured it out.
Right.
And that's just not the case. You are smart. You are wonderful. But a little bit of push and a little bit of help in the right direction. I mean, we can all do our taxes using TurboTax, but you probably shouldn't.
Yeah. You could actually learn about it and do it yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some really great CPAs that went to Harvard here. And like, you know, it's like, yeah, I want to learn from the smart
But
people.
even with the CPA, you got to know what they're doing. Because, you know, like we have an awesome CPA, but like me and my best friend business manager, we sit there and this is what we talk about. That's our little thing that we talk about while we're playing basketball, you know, and you know, we end up coming up with good ideas and like owning it and owning that you are, like, it's what you said, like you are smart, you are capable, but you have to do it. Just
be curious. Just
do it. Like do the stuff.
I think too is that we kind of forget, and I don't know at what point in our lives, whether my own narrative because of trauma or whatever, but it's like, at what point did I have to remind myself that I'm still a beginner? I still should have a learning mind. I still, talking about marriage, you know, approaching and you're going to see this on fast forward with your new baby girl, but being curious. When you watch your daughter someday on the floor, you know, struggle to tummy time to then walk. Hey, listen, as human beings, it is still tummy time, you know, and we have to remind ourselves that like, yeah, did it feel good to be on your tummy? No, I think they set a timer now, you know, but like, yeah, you only move forward when you're like, I'm sick of this position. Yeah. So, hey, get sick, you know, not physically, but you might already be physically, then get moving. And here's one little way, you know, you're obviously listening to Dr. Gary and now you know me. So I always say no one gets stupid. You know, you'd have to like press stop right now listening to us, but this is a way for you to push that needle forward and you have everything you need. You know, I literally grew up without food in the house. So if I can do it, I walked to school, as I can remember, eating powdered sugar. Seriously thought I was the luckiest kid. Because what kid doesn't?
But you also don't know any better.
We didn't
if you
know
got
any
that,
better.
that's what you got. You know? We grew up in poverty. You know, we were immigrants and we had nothing. But I didn't know any better.
We didn't know any better.
And actually, this is when I became in like middle school, and I became best friends with an American kid. Who comes from wealth, and I was like watching it, and it was so confusing to me. I didn't even know that like you could want the things that they would
right.
want.
Did they have granola? I remember going into a kid's house and I just remember they had this huge, I mean, I was living in a trailer at the time and oh, the stories I could tell you about wearing white pants and taking a jacket to cover my pants that weren't washed. But then in my mind, I was like, well, if the kids, and it was in Sacramento, if the kids, if I like went out to play at recess, they would think that I just got dirty. Like these are the things like you're thinking about. But in saying that, I remember there was a neighbor and they had like this massive thing of granola on their counter. I just thought, is that thing just full all the time? Like these are the thoughts that go through your like, and if you go in my pantry now, I'm like, you better keep that granola stacked up. Why? Because that's still an old narrative from childhood, but it served us. I think where people struggle now is that's a very uncomfortable childhood. But what about the middle the middle ground where they're not quite uncomfortable, but they're uninspired? And so how do we give them the lessons of, hey, you either take that $5 now and put it towards your health or put it in the cancer bucket. Yeah. Because that's where we're going. We try to be so comfortable that we forgot you still need to be responsible. Yeah.
Yeah, and also comfort is not health, right?
No.
It's
a whoopee.
It's acute stressors, like bodybuilding.
We don't get it.
But bodybuilding is a representation, can be a representation of all of these parts of your life that you want to improve. You know, like I always say, chronic stress makes you sick. Acute stress makes you healthy, right?
Yeah.
That's what bodybuilding is.
It is.
You look at, like, I looked at my shoulders, and I'll never forget that. I think it was in Pumping Iron.
Yeah.
And he's like looking at himself, and he looks incredible. Schwarzenegger. He looks incredible, but he's like, look at my shoulders.
Right.
They're slightly disproportional. And he's like, I'm gonna do 14 reps of this weight every day, and in 6 weeks, and then 6 cuts of 6 weeks, and you see it, and it's like that's the kind of control that you can exhibit over yourself, over your mind, your body, your spirit, all those things by that approach of like identify that thing, see where you're going, and then just start that day. Like, he didn't just juice up his shoulders. He just started doing the set, and every day he did the set, and suddenly your body responds.
It's
and
that
now,
simple.
He looked the best, I think, of any bodybuilder ever. I still haven't seen a bodybuilder.
I agree.
I think most bodybuilders agree with that. Now the aesthetic's gotten a little,
and he's a
wild.
little taller too. Most pros. So I'm 5'10". Most pros are on the female side are 5'2". So we also look really different on stage. And I think what Arnold's physique was so impressive was, I mean, when you look at me and Flex Wheeler, I mean, I'm a little bit taller than him, you know what I mean? So, but you don't know that until you see reality and you see like with like. But to your point with bodybuilding, I literally was driving to the gym to hurt myself.
Yeah.
I was driving to the gym thinking and it sounds crazy, like, well, something's wrong with you, but no, I found a positive outlet to put myself in these uncomfortable situations and grow through them. For the most part, I would say any pro bodybuilder, because you can't get to that level if your mindset, this is a mind work game, as is life. But in saying that, no bodybuilder's going like Arnold. He wasn't like, if I do 14 more reps on my front delt, my mom is going to like me more. That is not part of the narrative. The narrative is, I'm going to do this, I'm going to commit, and I'm going to focus on this one thing because I can be impactful to improve this. Okay. It's not easy, but it is simple. And that's what I was trying to achieve from a whole at the Serenity Sphere is, hey, if you could look at your life in terms of like, what is your front delt, right? What is your left front delt that's a little bit disproportionate? Because in all honesty, it's the one holding you back the most, right? Is that your education? Is that how the way you feel about your job?
The people you surround yourself with. I don't want to forget that. I've taken quizzes like this. It was so important that you included that because that's like such an important part of how you actually accomplish any of this stuff is surrounding yourself with people. You don't choose your family, but if you choose the chosen family can make or break you. Yeah, they can make you an alcoholic or they can make you a successful doctor. And I say this to all my friends because like, oh, like, you know, I'm just their friend, but I happen to like have all this knowledge and it's cool to them. But I'm like, that's only because of everyone. It's only because of everyone that I
say
felt
that all the time. I tell them, I'm like, listen, I'm only because you make me happy. You bring a part of joy and love and pleasure in my life that without it, I would be, you know, back in my 30s alone, just working. I didn't have friends until I was in my 40s. I didn't grow up with friends from high school. I know some people, but there wasn't that kind of or I moved on, right? I don't have a loyalty to an old ideal of someone in my life. That's the other really important thing is looking at your community. And the reason why I ask those questions that way, and you'll know when you take the test, is because we have an idea sometimes on how we think people are supposed to show up and the value they may or may not be adding. But I ask those questions very poignantly because you'd basically have to lie or be living in a wonderful ignorant bliss, which both are acceptable. You know, I kind of akin life with clients to look at your life as like a football field. We'll talk about the inside first. The left-hand side by the goalpost, let's call that the visiting team. You know, those are your folks that you'll find where it's the backhanded compliments. It's the life looks perfect in photos, but you meet them and you're like, they hate each other, you know? And then you have the field. And the field is, you know, folks going, pushing left, pushing right, pushing left, pushing right. They're trying to do the work. They're trying to push the ball a little bit closer to home, right? And that home field is this unapologetic acceptance of just who you are and where you be. Because once you can have that crosswords moment, right? Dr. Gary's shaking his head, where you're like, wait a second, I was inspired by this writer, and I want to be better. I can do this. And so it's like, you know, most of the world is kind of going back in between the goalposts, but there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of work and effort that gets there. And then hopefully you'll get to some form of like, you know, maybe where we're at, right? Which is, I love my life. I work my ass off to maintain it and my relationships. They are loving work. But I have an obligation to keep it as so because our life has meaning and that feels good.
It's a beautiful analogy for all of it.
Thank you.
I love my life. I think that I do. I love my life. But I think that life is inherently difficult.
Yeah.
It's very difficult and there's never a cruise control. Like there's no like accomplishing like, okay, no. I'm an IFBB Pro, I have a book, I have all this stuff. But all hell can break loose. Like,
it can.
Anything can fall apart. So it's like this constant work, you know?
Yeah.
And I learned that very acutely, and it doesn't have to have anything to do with you.
Right.
It can be 3 degrees of separation away.
Totally.
Something that seems like, what are you talking about? And it's so far away.
On a Tuesday at 11 a.m. And you're like, wait, I was just trying to do what I normally do. Wait, what's happening?
What's happening? You get a phone call and all of a sudden everything's different. And that's it. Like the trajectory of your life changes. And that's why you do the work. You do all this stuff so that you can manage it. And even then, you can't. And then you have to go back to the foundation of like, I need to like meditate or I need to sleep better. I really need to clean up my diet because that's going to make me handle the stress better. You know, it's like all of these foundational pieces, even if you've been doing it for decades, can it's like a muscle that you constantly have to train, you know? The IFBB Pro can never be on stage without constantly training.
Yeah.
You stop for a month and you're not like ready to be on stage anymore. And that's life. Life is this constant battle of like.
It teaches you but actually, you know, let's call it a discipline. This discipline I really got in the military where.
I forgot.
I went to, he's like, oh, you got some more?
Yeah.
My undergrad was I went to Merchant Marine Academy and, you know, people are going to die. You know, the decisions that you make are not about, did you wear black socks or did you wear white socks? We don't even question those things. It's that these decisions, this roadmap of how we conduct ourselves is because if we make a mistake, much like a pilot, the whole ship goes down. And that's when you get on the news. You know, and that's what I'll tell some of my famous clients is, hey, we're not allowed to lose our shit on the news because, you know, no one is allowed to just run amok. However, you know, you're actually, you know, you'll go on recording and you'll never outlive it. And the same thing happens with normal people in their lives. We have to figure out a way to manage the things that we have. And the military, along with bodybuilding, just provided me just such a sane approach that was personal but wasn't personal. And the amount of therapy, I'll say, that I got, and I've been through years in therapy. I still have it there, coaching. You really should. But it gave me a roadmap to be able to try to improve myself both internally and externally. And, I first started coaching my first year, I wanted to quit because I was making monsters. I had rapidly grown folks to an aesthetic ideal on paper, right? And I remember taking one athlete and I would do posing at my house and we look in the mirror and I go, all right, well, we did the thing. You look quote unquote perfect. How do you still feel about what's going to happen with your mom this weekend?
Right.
And that's actually when I went back to school and went through life coaching and things, because I realized I either hate these people because they are doing wrong. It was like pretty people being mean. That's, first of all, no one can be mean, and being pretty is subjective. But in saying that, I need to be able to take these humans and grow them faster or at an equal rate of the way that we're making an impact on the outside. Mm-hmm. Because if I don't do that, what have I really contributed to the world? And I need to get better. I need more skills. I need to work on my language. I need to work on, I'm a vampire. If I'm not invited into the room, I don't go in it. But, this is where coaches are so beautiful. And I love my therapist, but, we sit in two very different constructs of where we can go. But in saying that, it's like, yeah, I get to kind of go, hey, do you just want the answers? Because these are kind of some of the answers to the quiz right now. Whereas, in traditional medicine, you're not allowed to do that, right?
Yeah, traditional medicine is like the most limiting thing. I mean, if I was going to, outside of just the unpredictable nature of the insurance models and the overwhelming burden that it creates on everything that
Both
it touches.
Of you.
No, everything.
Yeah.
Everyone touching insurance.
Yeah.
It's the limited amount of like work I can do, you know, and the time and the expectations are so limited, and then when you try to expand past them, it no longer becomes financially viable in a second, and that's impossible to maintain, right? I can give myself to all sorts of people, but if I can't maintain my rent and my employees, then it doesn't work.
No, Atlas still needs to eat and keep the roof over our head. And you also don't want us worrying about, it's like running a startup. I'm on my second startup, my third startup. But it's like, the founders and the people running the business, they can't also be worrying about, how they're going to eat. When stress comes into play, and we're not talking about acute stress, but when stress comes into play, our cortisol shuts down, our cortisol is increased, our creativity shuts down, our deductive reasonings, your verbal skills, it all goes out the window, and we no longer even able to communicate and articulate factually how I'm feeling right now, right? So being able to, part of what we haven't talked about is one of the things I really want to leave folks with is, heart rate monitor training. You want to know the key to bodybuilding and why we are so successful. Not a lot of bodybuilders realize what they're actually doing, but I'm going to give you the reason. Because it speaks to, I could name, out of the thousands of people I've coached, I've only been successful with 4. And that was just a product of...
When you say successful, getting them on...
100% what they wanted inside and outside.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, like if they were trying to lose 50 pounds, no meds, here you go, right? Because... Again, I've been doing it for a long time, so GLP-1s are relatively new. But in saying that, though they were a product of, it really wasn't the right time in their life. But heart rate monitor training, and understanding what your roommate thinks you're doing, where it's looking for fuel, your perception of output is not output. And understanding, that you running on a treadmill, for example, has anyone ever seen a bodybuilder running on a treadmill? This is not genetics. This isn't drugs. This is using science and the tools that we've been given in the smartest way possible. And what you're going to see, I hope, from me, and a lot of people will start talking about it, it's a phrase that I've coined called metabolic overreach. And that is where we've been training for too long, for too hard, for too long. We're not watching our heart rate. And I don't mean whoop zones. I don't mean cycling zones. I mean your physical VO2 heart rate zones where your brain is no longer looking for glycogen stores and is burning through muscle mass and is starting to cause moments of stress. And yes, we want to get up there, and yes, we want to understand, but we also need to bring the body back down. And so it's a very broad topic.
It is.
But I say it because I want people to understand that this is the way that you physically change. More is not more. And we need to get the data, and we need to understand, like, what does your roommate think that you're doing? And what did you think that you're doing, and bring them together? Not just from nutrition, but like heart rate.
Yeah.
Because I mean, and I'm plugging that. And there's two terms I'll give you: metabolic overreach, and the other is your metabolic signature, which is understanding your body composition and really what your macronutrients should be.
Right.
And those three things, you know, kind of tell your mathematical story, and then lifestyle comes into play with it. Yeah, I know I like segued super back into
it was
like,
good. It's good. You want to leave people to something to think about. No one's brought that up, but yeah, I think on a very, very simplistic term, it's like training more doesn't accomplish anything.
No,
there's a right pocket, and your body and that person inside your head isn't actually accurately telling you how hard you're training. You have to understand it, and unless you do it for years,
it's the key to bodybuilding.
You need science.
Yeah, the reason why, I mean, before we started recording, we was talking about, you know, the bodybuilders are the OGs, right? Maybe we were talking about that. Mm-hmm. And so something I'm going to give you some insight to, because you have me, is if you really want to learn about how we are successful, it is understanding your heart rate in whatever evolution I'm doing, whether it's steady state cardio, but it talks about your actual metabolism, and that and your life decisions really put the power back in your hands so that you can take control.
Absolutely. So yeah, the future is definitely using the tech to guide the coach, who could then guide the person, and then eventually the person can use the tech. Otherwise, it's overwhelming. And
I know I segue there, but really because I want to leave people that they have the skills right now, and it's not genetics. It's that we just need to be a little bit better for you and be a little smarter so that we can give you the right answers.
Yeah, most of it is not genetics. Like, you know, these people going on TV saying obesity is genetic. I'm like, that's a bogus. I mean, there are genetic variables,
markers,
but like, it's not. It's how you treat your body, what you do every single day that drives your health, and you can control a lot more than people think. But it's not. It's not easy.
It's simple.
It takes effort.
Yes.
It's simple, but not easy.
Yes. And keep telling yourself that, right? And I think that's where people say, oh, what do we hear? Trust the process. And, you know, it's like part of you have to sign up that it's part of the journey, right? We get up every single day, and I love what I do. If it were just finished, I mean, I guess I would be bored, right? So it's like falling in love with the work of it, you know?
Yeah.
And by the way, it's an investment. It's not being selfish. Yeah.
Or it is being selfish. I think the word selfish is a tricky one. I think that you have to do it for yourself. If you're gonna help people, you've got to do it because you want to do it.
Yeah.
And this idea that, oh, well, if I help someone, then that's good. No, it's good because you feel good.
Right.
That is selfish.
It is selfish, but because you're self-fulfilling your own prophecy.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to where we started, which is, Dr. Gary, you and I have an obligation to keep ourselves happy, but to also make sure that we're not giving away things that build resentment. And so if that is being selfish, I also don't want to be a hypocrite, right? Where, you know, I want to look the look, talk the talk. And also, how can I ask you to do all these life things if I myself wasn't able to figure out my own mousetrap? Not that your mousetrap needs to be mine or vice versa, but I'm doing the thing every day. I'm a normal human being, not a prude. But I'm going to put myself back, and I'm going to show up for you on Monday, because that's what I signed up to do.
It's the only way to help people.
Yeah.
I think that's a great place to leave it. Thank you so much. What a great conversation.
Thank you so much,
I
Dr.
needed
Gary.
it.
Yeah.
I just had therapy. Thank you.
We're going to hug it out.
We're going to hug it out. But as we wrap up, can you tell everyone, I think we mentioned it, but can you tell people where they can find your book, where they can find your coaching, where they can learn more about you?
Yeah. I'm all over social media. Again, my name is Christina Williams, and my website is imaginewhaticanbe.com. If you go on there, it's going to ping you and say, take the Serenity Sphere quiz. And I'm always really open to feedback too. This quiz, this experience is only as good as, the iterations that we learn through each other and connecting. If you want to listen to my SoundCloud, I'm also music production. It's Femme Fatale. And yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Gary. I really, really, my cup is so filled up right now.
Me too. Thank you so much. And for all you listening, thank you. And until next time, goodbye.
Bye.